morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whichever part of the world and whatever time zone you're joining us from. Welcome. Welcome to the 2023 edition of the Black Consciousness Festival, where we're focusing on healing and reconnection for a second year. The Black Consciousness Festival is a global platform that connects people of African descent with each other by sharing and encouraging exchange through information, traditions, histories, intentions, traumas, celebrations, legacies, stories connecting to pride, power, and practice. Our inaugural year was in 2020, where we created a month of conversations and activities around topics of Black consciousness. In 2021, we had a few events: a youth festival, a weekend of conversations and reparations, and in November, conversations on shift, as we explored the many ways in which we as people of African descent shared and rebirthed elements of ourselves. In 2020, we focused on healing and reconnection for the first time, and we've decided to continue that theme this year because it's so important for our soul. The recordings of all of these conversations are available on our website, theblackconsciousnessfestival.com, and our YouTube channel. As you listen to the conversations, we encourage you to be kind to yourself. Pause, breathe consciously, move, and appreciate all that you are. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome to this closing conversation, Dia da Consciência Negra, Black Consciousness Day in Brazil. We join our siblings in Brazil as we remember the life of Zumbi dos Palmares, freedom fighter, Quilombo leader, resistance. We give thanks for his legacy of commitment, his legacy of leadership, and we are reminded that through his example, we are empowered in our own way to do what we can to ensure the healing of our community. At this time, we also give thanks for ourselves, all the members of the board of directors. We give thanks for those ancestors who are with us, journeying with us, who continue to guide and light a path for us. We give thanks for those who are walking with us, and we give thanks for those who are coming after us, for whom one day we will be good ancestors. So we continue to give thanks for this festival. We give thanks for life, we give thanks for health, we give thanks for strength and the ability to move and to think and to connect. We give thanks always, and we take a collective breath in appreciation for all that is, breathing in through your nose and breathing out. We give thanks always. So I'm inviting the other members of the board, Sean, and Taika, Nicholas, Ival. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you? How are you doing?
Good.
And you?
Good. What is good, Sean?
Good is a small word that means many things, but yeah. Happy to be, seeing the great festival that we pulled off in the last couple of days. So yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah. I'm good. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling a little less pressured. A bit relieved that the festival is successfully over,
Yes.
So I'm feeling all of that, the mixed emotions that go with something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And Taika?
Glad to be in space with you all. Feeling excited to round off all of these great conversations that we've been having. And when Nicholas said that he has to make a tack back and see the conversations that he missed. But as soon as I get my notification on YouTube, I was tapping in. So I got lots of juicy nuggets that I'm looking forward to rewatching and then just going to share and sending things on WhatsApp and by email.
Yeah.
So some nice conversations this year and some beautiful people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a privilege.
Yes.
So we give thanks to all of our
So we give
guests.
thanks.
Indeed.
Yes, definitely we give thanks. So we're really just going to do a recap of the festival. We could talk about some of the things that came up for us, what stood out for us.
Hmm.
And in the final analysis, if we could take away, talk about one thing that we're going to take away.
Yeah.
If it's a ritual, if it's a word, whatever it is, if we could talk about that. Because I think it's important as we continue the conversation on healing and reconnection that, we pay attention to community. It's
Yeah.
about us individually, and it's also about community. So we think about something we can give to people, we can leave them with.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Um, one of the first things I want to say is, and I don't know why it stood out to me this year. Maybe it could just be that I'm in a different space, or it could just mean that something different is happening in the environment. But I was really moved by the participants' generosity this year. I found that the people who participated in the conversations this year were really very, what they shared was extremely generous, and not only in terms of the content that they shared, which of course I think was amazing, but also, just being willing to engage in these conversations, um, saying yes to the invitation, and being prepared to tackle some really heavy hitting issues for us as a community. So that really stood out to me this year. Of course, there's certain conversations that were my favorites, um, but I'll leave that for a little later in the conversation. Yeah. I don't know what anybody else thinks. And well, let me ask, Taika and Nicholas. They are at the bottom of my screen. I don't know where they are at other people's screens. But what were your, if there was one conversation that kind of hit you heaviest, which conversation would that be?
Well, like Taika said, this week has been really hectic for me, so I didn't get the chance to tune in
Hmm.
like I would usually. But from the content that I had seen prior to, the conversations being held, I think we did a good job, at rounding off the team healing and reconnection. There was so much ground to cover. I don't think last year's festival, although it was, comprehensive, I think there was more to be said, within the sphere of healing and reconnection. But
Hmm.
I really, I will say, whenever I sit down to, brainstorm ideas for the festival or approve things for the festival or put my name down to participate in things for the festival, I really think about what I need right now the most.
Hmm.
Um, which, for me is a reflection, I think, as a Black person of what other Black people, my age, my demographic might also need, at the same time. And that conversation that I had with Laura Jackson,
Hmm.
like I really needed to have that conversation about self-compassion, especially as an activist. Like there was one point in the conversation where we spoke about, me, for lack of better words, feeling burnt out with, having to carry or like brand myself, give myself the responsibility of this, like, I hate to say it, but like social justice warrior or like martyr figure in the community where, like, if I experience racism, I have to ensure that I do everything in my power to prevent it from, happening to somebody else.
Hmm.
But, it's okay for me to just feel what I feel in that moment. Process that instead of like sweeping it under the carpet and suppressing it and repressing it and just trying to fight it head on. I can just rest. I can, I don't need to exhaust myself over this, So yeah, I think the conversation that I had with Laura Jackson, although it's the only thing really that I had a chance to take in so far, I will definitely be going back to the catalog like I always do, if not tomorrow, next month, if not next month, next year, if not next year, next decade, because it's always there. That's the good thing about having a virtual or a mostly virtual festival. It's always going to be there for us to go back to whenever we need things. So yeah.
Yeah.
Taiko, Erica, any favorites?
There's a conversation that we had with a young man from Rwanda,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in public transit when that conversation was happening, but really tuned in. And there was a moment where he said, it is tough being in this space as an artist, but I still create regardless of what's happening or what's going on. And
Oh,
that's
the
a
guy from
statement.
Angola.
Angola, say
Right.
Rwanda, Angola, yes.
When you say Rwanda, I was here trying to figure out which conversation Taika talking about. But yeah,
Angola.
when you
No,
said
I'm sorry, I was having a conversation about Rwanda today. So you see,
right.
yeah, and he was talking about no matter what's happening in the space, he has to create, he has to make something, and he didn't intend to be singing or DJing, but it happened in his life, and so he just has to create. He has to make things.
Yeah.
That was really poignant for me. In this space, I had to make something. I had to do something. So I enjoyed that conversation a lot. That despite what's happening, make something.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think what stands out for me in the festival this year, and we've had people come on board with us, but the generosity of people who said yes. Repair campaign, community healing network, saying yes and coming on board with us to have these important conversations. And for me, that showed community in action. Not just talking community, but really acting it out, being prepared to commit and being there. So that stood out for me, as part of what happened in the festival this year. I had some favorites, but the one, always, I always have favorites. So it's don't ask me to choose. But the one that really blew me was the conversation with young people on climate justice, I think it was.
Yeah.
Iva led that conversation with a young person from Dominica, South Africa, and I think it was Uganda.
Yes.
Again, young people, 20, 21, and dealing with issues that, in a way, very committed, very vocal, very aware of what was happening around them. And I think what struck me at the time was that at 2021, I don't know if I had the kind of language they had at that age to be talking things like reparatory justice and social justice and all of these things, and that is what impressed me. And that is what, again, reminded me that the narratives we hear sometimes around us about our young people, they're not correct. It's one person's idea of what our youth, how our youth are being, what it is they're doing. But on a larger scale, I see our young people doing brilliant things. Having, a kind of fearlessness where they are prepared to go all out to make a difference. And also being prepared to act and not waiting for government or waiting for some entity. So you hear, I think it's the guy from Uganda and the guy from Dominica talking about planting 50,000 trees over the next 3-4 years. Actually getting up and doing something with the people around them. And for me, that's inspirational.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that, what, we're good, we're okay, we have challenges, we have a lot of healing to do, but at the end of the day, we are on a path. Our young people are guiding, they're leading. So our future is here. As one participant said, he said the future is now, and that's why we're here doing what we have to do. That conversation, I think, is spot on.
Yeah.
And
For
of
me,
course, there's
sorry.
others. Sorry, Sean.
Go ahead.
They want another. I mean, all of them, but they want about spirituality, about voodoo spirituality, getting an understanding of that, and looking at how our root in Africa, how it continues to support us. So I remember the guy saying, something that stands out, Benin is a space where you go for voodoo information and voodoo spirituality. But Haiti is the Dahomey too, as he called it. That's the space where he said, the technology was activated so that the enslaved could do something. And that's the power that gave them the impetus to have that Haitian revolution. So he talked about that, so that if you go to Haiti, it's a different kind of activation that's happening. And I find that so empowering, that this thing that we have, the rituals, the knowledge that we have, we can use those things, we can access them because they are accessible. We can access them and use them in different spaces that would add value to us, that would help in our healing and reconnecting with the motherland. So.
Yeah. I want to ask, Nicholas spoke about the conversation he participated in. I want to ask Taika how she felt in the conversation she participated in, and if there were any, significant takeaways from that.
Well, now several people want to know when they could join a circle, and I said, but this is not one of those fake susu things, This is not where you have to put a flower and make an investment with money and things. No, no, no. It is about investing in oneself. So you have to be committed, whether it's the 6 weeks or 3 weeks or 4, 8, or it's a commitment to oneself. So if you are not ready to commit to yourself, maybe you'll be anyone after. So that's the conversations I have been having in the past few days.
Right.
I know you love the chat. It was great. Maria was sharing a lot in this session about how she's been using it with her students. And so a couple of friends of mine who are teachers and thinking like, yo, that song is real good. Yes, but if the ministry is stressing you out, you need to get some tools. So put your name down, and when we have a circle, I'm going to invite you. Don't check it out now. And I thought it was really interesting. We had a little chat after the conversation was live about involving more men in the circle and getting more men involved in actively participating in getting tools to manage themselves.
Yeah.
And only one man reached out to me. I said, But that's all right. That one man is enough.
Yes.
Ask him to bring one or two with him.
Drop the fill bucket, right?
Yes.
So one by one by one, and people will see how he is engaging the skills in his life, and they'll say, "Hey, where you get that from?" Right? So I'm definitely looking forward to that. It was nice to be in room with my classmates. I know using the term classmates very loosely there, but when you graduate, right? You graduate from school and you go to the reunion and you see people who you liked and who you get to work with. I'm like, oh, that was so nice. Only thing was because I will eat some drinks, but it was really nice to reconnect with ladies from our EEC. And also to hear Laura talking with Nicholas too. I was like, look, Laura. So that was nice. Because if you don't know, Laura is one of the leads alongside Sean and Ayana, who led the EECs earlier this
Yeah.
year. And I told Sean, when you're ready for, facilitators, ring me.
Yeah, you had to go through the facilitator training first time.
That's okay. I am ready. Sean think I kick it in America. I feel
No,
he
I
think
don't
I
think you
kick
can
it.
do it at all. I think you're very serious, and I will be
Ready.
giving you a call.
Yeah.
Yes, this is really important work. When we were in Africa Film this year, we talk about belonging,
Mm-hmm.
and that's sparking a conversation of like, let's continue on with healing this year and
Mm-hmm.
reconnection. And there's this conversation about the diaspora wars and all of that. I think that
Mm-hmm.
this festival, especially this year, as you say, Sean, something is in the air
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
of our ability to connect with people of African descent in so many places,
Mhm.
not just in the
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean, but on
Mm-hmm.
the continent as well, and even in North America and in Latin America. I think that's
Yeah, yeah.
you
As you
can't
was,
get it anywhere else. It's beautiful.
yeah, as you were saying that,
Yeah.
the conversation that you referenced, that you listened to, that touched you with the youth activist from Angola. I remember when I first saw his work, his profile on Instagram, and reached out to him. He was a little hesitant at first, because that space is a very kind of regimented, limited space, Angola, and so he was, he kind of had to suss me out to figure out, is this legit? Is it a proper organization, or is it somebody trying to maybe extract information or troll him or something? Um, and at one point, I asked him if there were any other activists that might be interested in joining the conversation. And he came back to me and said, there were several other people who were interested, but they didn't feel brave enough or courageous enough. Because just like, I think it was last year or the year before, when we had an Angolan artist who was
Mm-hmm.
part of
Kim
a,
Praise. Yeah.
yes, Kim Praise. Kim also said, I remember
Mm-hmm.
very vividly, that there were certain things he was sharing that could potentially get him in trouble. Certain
Mm-hmm.
things he was expressing about, just life and how things are in Angola. So, we also see these people who, besides the generosity of time and willingness, they are also putting themselves on the line to talk about
Mm-hmm.
things that are important to them and to us, and to inspire us, because he inspired you, right, Taika?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt. And so nobody can come now to tell me nothing about fighting with folks from the continent. Go from here with that
Mm-hmm.
stupidness.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're not battling one thing, we're battling another.
Mm-hmm.
And this
Mm-hmm.
festival is a small little gateway into seeing how many things we have in common.
Mm-hmm.
In common. Yeah. And I think when we get caught up with the distractions of fighting each other, we're moving away from the healing and the reconnection. And, I think we forget that sometimes it might be a deliberate ploy to keep us apart.
Mm-hmm.
And we fall into that trap because we caught up in holding space and wanting to be better than or othering, people. So it's recognizing what I call that trap and making a commitment to not being part of it.
Mm-hmm.
To do what we can then to build bridges, to hold hands out, build bridges, see each other,
Mm-hmm.
and not see what we think the other person is, but really see each other and hold space for each other. And also, I think be inspired to be fearless in our own way to speak up, because when you look at the risk that these artists are taking to
Mm-hmm.
have this conversation with us, I think it's challenging us then to speak up a bit more, to stand up a bit more,
Mm-hmm.
to be fearless in the spaces where we can be fearless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That reminds me of, in the conversation you had, Erica, with Dr. White. Many things you all said really just stood out to me, and brought additional clarity. And one of those things, well, two of those things I want to bring up, which connects to what you were just talking about, The first one is, when she said that we don't have to do it by ourselves. We don't have to do this work
Yeah.
by ourselves,
Yeah.
And I think what Taika mentioned about us realizing that other people are going through similar things or even greater challenges, we realize that this work of healing and reconnection is not a singular job. It's not us
Mhm.
just sitting in a corner trying to figure out how to do this, but
Mhm.
we have to do it together. We have to do it
Mhm.
together. And the
Mhm.
second thing that stood out to me was, um, and this is something I've always kind of grappled with when people ask me, like, what advice do you give to someone who feels that they don't have the strength to interface with or to face things like movies and books and narratives about what our ancestors went through, right? The difficulty in engaging with that kind of information. And I mean, I generally don't have difficulty with it, but I know many people do. And one of the responses that she gave, I'm going to be using that going forward, was that, to get to the healing, to get to the reconnection, we can't go under it, we can't go around it, but we have to go through it. We have to face it head on. Because if we don't come to terms with it and in a way understand it, connect with it, feel the pain, then
Mhm.
how can we really heal from it?
Yeah. Yeah. Not shying away from the pain and not being afraid to talk about the pain as well.
Hmm.
Because I think one of the things we've learned very well is to pretend that we're okay
Hmm.
when inside, we're breaking apart, and I think that's one of the things we have to know, it's okay in community
Hmm.
because we have to create that safe space and we have to be aligned with what it is we're saying, when we talk about healing and reconnection and building community, so that people know it's okay to come and just offload for a bit, come and rest a while so that you could continue, pick up the burden and go again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
In that,
also, I think
sorry, go
it's
ahead.
important for us to, pick up the books and look at the films and whatever, to also open our eyes in the real world and realize that, a lot of these things are still happening, just in a different way, and that the trauma is still being inflicted, and we are just maybe desensitized to it at this point, you know?
Or thinking that, or we've been fooled to think that, oh well, that was 500 years ago.
Exactly.
We've
Mhm.
moved past that and we've
We've moved
progressed and
past that.
we're in a modern
Yeah.
society. But yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
Nicholas. The
Yeah.
mechanisms are still at work and doing the same
Mhm.
things to us,
Mhm.
that it did to our ancestors, just maybe in a different format, but achieving the same things.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about that conversation you had with Fiona on reparations. And I think, I'm aware of the CARICOM 10-point plan, but that conversation in terms of going through it one by one, it was so, educational.
Hmm.
It was fun as well, but it
Yes.
was very educational and it put the whole thing in perspective, in terms of laying it out. So probably if you ask me now, I might be able to say more than just, the formal apology
Yeah.
because of that conversation, the
Right.
sharing that came out of it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the motivation for that conversation, because prior to that conversation, Fiona and I had done a short live on Instagram. Um, and of course, on Instagram, there was a lot more interactivity with the audience.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we realized after doing that short live on Instagram was that a lot of people in the Caribbean and the Caribbean diaspora in other parts of the world, whether it be Europe or North America or whatnot, really are not plugged in to what
Mm-hmm.
the different elements of reparations mean, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
ask anybody about reparations, and the first thing that will probably come to their mind is money, is a cash payout,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
reparations is so much more than that. In fact, the money is
Mm-hmm.
probably the smallest part of it because there's so
Mm-hmm.
many other things that have to be addressed. I mean, starting with the apology, which we had that long
Mm-hmm.
conversation today with Crystal Crawford and from Guyana and Brian from Jamaica, really
Right.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
fleshing out what is an apology really about and how does
Mm-hmm.
it contribute to our process of healing? Why is it important towards our process of healing? But then all the other things that Fiona and I talked about that, as you rightfully said, Erica, when you start to flesh them out and see how they impact or they're connected to our everyday lives in the Caribbean, realize how important it is to really have a sense of the 10 points. It's not enough just to think that reparations is about money. And everybody in the Caribbean, especially young people, should be able to rattle off not necessarily what the points are, but what are the issues.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that conversation this morning with Brian and Crystal was quite informative too, in terms of what is happening in Guyana.
Yes.
The involvement of young people, going into communities and using the art as a tool for education in terms of the conversation around reparations, and recognizing, the apology is one thing. It's got to start, but it's not enough.
Right.
As she said, you have to come, you have to come and work with us. So it's
Correct.
one thing to apologize and give money, but that's not it.
Yeah.
Your actions have to show that you're really sorry about what happened. And how do we know that? We see it by what it is you do after.
Yeah. When she said that this morning, Erica, the first thing that jumped into my mind was, what transpired for the 400 to 500 years in the region was Europeans relocating to the Caribbean in most cases. I mean, you had absentee landlords, but you had colonizers who relocated from Europe to the Caribbean and lived and framed everything here, right? So now that it's over and you have work to do to repair, you can't want to do it from over there. You need to come here and do it.
You need to come, yes.
Right?
You need to come here and do it.
You need to come and undo your juju, right?
And we will take the money if it's good, given in good faith, but it's not enough to just throw the money at us. That's not it.
And it has to be sustainable money as well. It can't be a drop of £3 million and that's it. It has to be money that is going to be used and sustained over a period of time to make real change in the region. Because it didn't take 1 year to do what they did. It took hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years. And I think it's important to recognize too, that the healing is for us, but it's also for them.
Oh, definitely.
They also have to do their own healing. It's not, for me, it's not our responsibility, but it's recognizing that. So that we don't get into the othering of people. And if it is, we would have rules flipped, that we do what it is was done to us, So.
Yeah. It's so complicated. It's so complicated because even though sometimes we might have the tendency to kind of, polarize the discussion into us and them, it's not that clear cut. Because a part of them is us and a part of us is them. We're not like cut down the middle and separated, because whether you're talking at a genetic level, a cultural level, we are, because of what has happened in this space, we have become interconnected and intertwined, and I think that's what makes it, such a complicated process, but one that has to happen.
And the thing is, we have to observe that first. There are many people who do not see that, on both sides, that do not see that interconnectedness, many times.
And I don't know how they don't see that, Nicholas, because all the food that they eating come from here, right? Right? All the sugar and the tomato paste and the potato chips and the cassava and the chili pepper, don't let me go down the line, and the pineapple, all these things come from the Americas. So their lives, their lives have been enriched by this interaction. There has been a give and take. The world has been totally changed by this interaction, by this clash of civilizations, if you want to call it that. But the world is no longer the same. I mean, I saw a post this afternoon on Instagram about a Nigerian woman who apparently has this new company that is doing magnificent things with cassava. And the first thing that jumped into my mind is, but cassava is not an African thing, though. Right?
It is now.
Correct, right? And if you watch any movie about Africa, you will see people using corn a lot and cassava and these things that came from the Americas. So that has transformed and changed and shifted African diets and African ways of living, and vice versa. And so yeah, so that's one of the ways that we could start to talk about that, because that interconnection and how we have forever shifted each other's realities, right? Start with the food first now, because everybody likes food. And
Yeah,
then
we
you
love to eat. We do. But I agree, Sean. It's like, how are they can see it? This system is not a system designed by us.
well, first thing is that a lot of those things aren't taught, like
Exactly.
Well, yes, you know they are. The school system and the people who run the school system is the people who say that it's not important to learn these things.
right.
Very,
For a reason, they know what they're
divide
doing.
and conquer. Divide and conquer.
But
That's
you
why
know,
Trinidadians don't know anything about Tobago. Ask them, they
yeah,
don't know. And that is supposed to be our sister island. We don't know how Barbados works. We don't know how Grenada works. We couldn't tell you a thing about Vinci except that they drink sunset rum and they have a nice
yeah,
mask. We don't know anything about each other right here in this formerly the British West Indies.
Yeah.
Purposefully.
No, you're absolutely right. And don't even talk about going up the road a little higher, right?
Yeah.
When you start to talk about Haiti and the Dominican Republic and then that is like a whole other planet for some people.
Yeah. And
yeah.
then it's the understanding of what is West Indian versus what is Caribbean.
Mm.
Caribbean.
Because we were colonized by different people.
We would, but we wouldn't, huh? Because that is also part of the myth and the narrative. You know, that there was this separation and there was this, different ways of doing things. And to some degree, yes. But the more and more I get exposed to materialism, the more I realize, but that's not so.
I
That's
Exactly.
not
would say
so.
this is the most recent colonizer is the one that we are most familiar with.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how I should frame it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I mean, when you look at the history of Trinidad, for example, and the fact that people came from everywhere to populate this
Yeah.
island, as far back
Yeah.
as the 1700s, people came from Haiti and Martinique and Guadeloupe and wherever and wherever, and there
Grenada
was
and
there was always a
free
movement.
Africans, enslaved Africans. Yeah, it was always that.
There was
But
always
you,
movement.
but you know, I'm hearing about the education system, and that is part of the challenge. But I think part of our challenge too is that our elders stop talking.
Hmm.
They stop talking and sharing information with us.
But Erica, why you think that? Why you think they stopped talking?
Probably, I don't know if it's fear or if it's wanting to be more educated. When the
Hmm.
education thing took off,
Hmm.
and therefore handing over your community responsibility into a school,
Hmm.
which apparently was supposed to be the better thing to help you to progress up the social ladder.
Right.
I don't know if that's part of it. Why it is, we stop talking, we stop sharing in yards, people coming together and doing things as a group, you know. I know in some country areas it still happens, but on the whole,
Hmm.
I think that's where the gap happened. So even if school is not doing the education thing,
The community
there is
should.
supposed to be, yeah, a community which would kind
Hmm.
of settle you straight when you come back home. Don't matter what they're teaching you here, this is what we know, this is what we do, this is how things are. And I think that's part of the missing equation for us.
I wonder if, as you were saying that, I wonder if it has to do with the fact that in the region, when we became independent, there were people like ourselves, people of African descent and color, who assumed these positions of authority, right? And the reason I say that is because in spaces like Brazil, where there's still a kind of white elite running things politically and economically, that community function of passing
Mm-hmm.
on culture, passing on knowledge, passing on traditions is still very active because they
Yeah.
understand that they are operating in a hostile environment where
Mm-hmm.
they are not going to be given the right information from the system, right? So they have to have a
Mm-hmm.
subsystem or an alternate
Mm-hmm.
system to really pass on the things that matter. And maybe we fell into a kind of complacency in this space, thinking, well, we run things,
Yeah.
so
We have to leave this kind of backwardness that, but that really sustained us up to that point.
correct.
So now it's about going back and reclaiming some of those things which we've forgotten, which we've left.
And
to help us out.
I would say that it's taken me some time, but I really do have some compassion, I would say, for the elders that, may have suppressed the culture or hidden the culture for the sake of, the social mobility. Like I always say, our identity is not static. As, people of African descent, we constantly have to keep evolving according to the system just in order to survive. So if that's what they had to do in order to survive, that's what they had to do. But now we have to do something else, which is go back and pick up what they dropped.
Educate ourselves, and that came out so much, Sean, as you're talking in the Brazilian conversation today, where they were talking about the dance and how they developed, and how everything is done in community, and dance is not just for dance. It's to recognize your rishas and your ancestors, and that kind of richness, which I always kind of look back and pine for.
It's true, and when you go to Brazil, you feel it.
Yes,
you feel it in the way that people engage and people interact. There is the sense of, this is us, and this is how we do things, and we take care of each other and that kind of stuff. Which Trinidad used to be like. I remember it being like that as a child, and things have kind of changed over time. But
so we have work to do. We have work to do. Yeah,
and people like Taika need to activate, like Taika.
just so dry. My name easy to call by 5 letters.
No, I wasn't gonna blame you or anything. I was gonna say people like Taika have a role to play in that, because your art form, your work, really brings, could bring a lot of those things to life, for young people who, may be disconnected from it.
Yes, and operating in community is essential. But first, you have to understand what community is.
Correct.
So it's a lot of teaching and reteaching, and if you don't have the stamina, sometimes you might fall off and things. Which is why that conversation Nicholas had with Laura is very essential. You have to take care of yourself when you're doing this kind of work.
Yes.
Sometimes you just have to put it down and walk away for a little while, go for a sea bath, take a trip, lie with your friends, drink a little grog, have some time away from the work.
Yes.
Because you'll get buried in it and you might be able to come out. And it's also about understanding that community looks different
for different people.
Because we all receive in a different way and give in a different way. And so it's also about learning the individuals that are in your community. Somebody you could talk to them till the cows come home. The cows home drinking tea and you're still talking.
Cows just drink tea, Taika.
Let me let you know. The cows sipping. And it's not going to get through to them. But if you show them how to do something or to make something, it's a different type of learning experience. They might connect with it in a better way. So it's about understanding what community is, understanding the people that are in your community, understanding how to communicate effectively with the people in your community, and then how do we do the work? How do we take action now? Because we've adopted systems that don't belong to us. This nuclear family garbage where you have to leave your parents' place and go and live in another place.
You're trading words for Nicholas, Taika.
No. I don't know if Nicholas got put out. I'm not saying that. I do not know Nicholas is just like that. So it's this thing of, you're 18 now. It's time for you to leave the nest and go and live in your own house and get married and go in a place and have 2 children and go to school and go to church and love, and that's it. Whereas our communities, both African and because we live in Trinidad and Tobago, we need to
Mhm.
also shout out our Indo Trinidadian brothers and sisters.
Mhm.
The living situation is you're living in your house. This is your grandmother, your
Different
great
generation.
grandmother, your
Still the
Yeah,
grandfather.
same.
It's four
yeah.
generations living in a house. So
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
grandmother taking care of you, and if when you get older and you get married and you have a child, you're living there with your husband or you're living with your
Mm-hmm.
husband family, and
Mm-hmm.
he
Mm-hmm.
great grandmother taking care of your children, and it's this intergenerational community building because it's happening in your house, your neighbor house, down the road,
Mm-hmm.
next door.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's how the knowledge is passed, as Erica was talking
Yes.
about. The elders stop talking,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
also the younger generation stop listening or stop
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 caring
listening.
about what the
listening.
elders have to say
Yes.
because you
Yeah.
all you don't know nothing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
C-
And this is about six generations where we stop listening, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if we take into consideration the modern day griot, which would be the Calypsonian in Trinidad and Tobago,
Mm-hmm.
nobody
Mm-hmm.
listens to no Kaiso because all I want to do is complain. They say
Yeah.
by Calypsos our stories are told. The
Stories
only
are told.
Calypso, the only stories we hear is how the government battering we. And there are other stories in the space. So the
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
storytelling is missing, and this is a chat I was
Mm-hmm.
having with a friend on Saturday. The storytelling lacking in the space. Where the
Mm-hmm.
storytelling, every time you look at somebody gyrated in your face to tell you come and enjoy the carnival, like if that's the only element of being a Caribbean person.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
No, we want the storytelling,
We
and
want the storytelling.
that is why we need to re-educate and educate each other about community.
Yes. About
Because I will
community.
take the
About
stories from my
listening.
community and I will sing a kaiso so Erica will know about my community and then she would write a little kaiso and tell me about hers.
Yeah.
And that's how we know about all the events that happening and we're like, right, we documenting, we archiving, and we understanding and appreciating each other's cultures.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the way forward, really.
Taika,
That's the way forward.
what you describe in there, I think, is the second word of the theme, right? Reconnection. We have to
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
because what you're describing are what some people call in academic circles the technologies of our ancestors, right? Those are the ways that they, over time, figured out this is the way to keep community, this is the way to build, society
Mm-hmm.
and families and whatever. And it's about
Mm-hmm.
reconnecting to those things. We have disconnected from them, disconnected from
Mm-hmm.
the art of storytelling, from the art of
Mm-hmm.
building relationship, of communicating with each other. And it's about us doing the work to reconnect to those things.
Mm-hmm. And of one thing I like is it, dancing and drumming just for dancing and drumming.
Mm-hmm.
Not for it to be an event or something, but as part of building community and building the love and sharing, using those tools that we have to do that.
And those
Lots
things
of
will,
people only want to talk about the way it was when they're talking about disciplining children. When
mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah.
younger, I get licks and I turn out fine. But what are
Also,
the other elements in the space that have contributed to you getting big and hard back and stupid? Come on.
Mhm. But
correct.
also forgetting, Taika, that the licks is not part of who we are
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
as people. That's something which was imposed on us as well. And
Correct.
we own it as if it's ours, not understanding that's not ours.
Yeah.
Because we value children and elders in a different way in African communities. And that's what we came from.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Understanding that those who are close to the ancestral realm, those who have just come from, from it, they have something that
Hmm.
needs to come out in terms of that interaction.
Yeah.
And keeping in mind that proverb, the child that does not feel welcomed by the village
Well,
will
build
burn
it.
it down to feel its warmth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
These children setting the place on fire. I'm talking about Trinidad currently, but
yeah,
they're setting the place on fire because we don't care about them, and it's
Yeah.
yeah,
apparent in all of the ways that you could think about.
yeah. We're not seeing them, we're not hearing them, all of those things. And that's part of our own healing,
Mm-hmm.
to do the work on ourselves. to look at the ways in which we kind of dismiss them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how we don't value them, we don't think they have anything to offer or to share. And I hold firmly to the fact that some of these children who we dismiss are brighter than all of us. They can run rings around us, and they do. And it's to build that, to see them and to build that as we build our communities. Yeah. So we have work to do.
Mm-hmm.
We have plenty work to do. And we have plenty dancing to do, because part of the thing we have to do it with joy. Eh? It's hard work, but we had to bring the joy into it, because that's what our ancestors had too. They were always joyful. You know, I picture them singing as they're doing the hoeing or the whatever they have to do, washing the clothes. And that's the kind of joy they brought to their lives, which again, we can learn from.
Yeah.
We don't have to have a stiff upper lip and be
Yes.
boring with
Agreed. And this is very similar to how I ended my second season of my online show, to jam it. Black joy intimidates people
Mm-hmm.
because they want to know
Yeah.
what all they have to be so happy about.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have plenty things to be happy and grateful
We
about.
have
So
plenty things
leading
to be
with
happy.
grace and carrying joy is essential.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Folks,
Oh,
it
taking
has
a
been
deep
a
breath.
really interesting conversation. I wanted to share with you all two things though. One is from Alice Walker. Alice Walker is, that amazing African American artist who does all of these incredible installations. I don't know if you've seen some of the work she's done. That really kind of confronts the issues of colonialism and enslavement and post-coloniality and all that. But what I wanted to share with you all is a poem that she has called "The Ancestors Never Sleep." And the second thing, when we're wrapping up, that I want to share with you all is a quote that one of our participants from Brazil today, Junior Bertolino, she's a dancer, choreographer. She has something at the end, one of the signatures at the end of her email that is a Yoruba proverb that I've never seen, but is absolutely amazing. So if you all will permit me to share those things with you.
Yes, please.
So Ancestors Never Sleep by Alice Walker. Ancestors never sleep and always seem to know what they're doing. How is this possible, I ask myself. Sometimes I'm weary enough to expire. What a relief, I will think. No more obsessing about this madness, whatever it might be, this year or even this century. But ancestors merely yawn and send me off for a nap. Not only is life not over, they sniff, it has barely begun for you. There are eternities waiting just beyond the next bad movie you fear you'll be starring in. Go to sleep, rest your brain, rest your heart, rest your eyes, and all your thoughts. We have been with you from the beginning, which didn't exist, and we will be with you until that moment of non existence swings round again. You are attempting to carry the suffering all around you, but your back is bending. Let us bear it for you, knowing as we do that it is only a difficult turn on a never ending journey of dissolving and dissolving again and becoming once more, forever and ever, on and on. Save despair, our beloved sweet cakes, for a couple of eons later.
Ashe.
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 And
And
sorry,
before you do your final, I want to suggest that we do that last. If we can have some final words and,
yeah,
do our thank yous.
definitely.
Yeah. So I am doing thank yous to Kieran as usual.
For
Kieran's
sure.
foundation. Yeah, Kieran is the man, he makes us look good, as he would say. And he does it with such charm,
Yes.
and his intern Zachary, who makes it, so much easier. So I want to thank them.
Hmm.
And of course Lee again for the amazing graphics. Lee is just Lee. I don't know what else to say about Lee. but she's an amazingly beautiful woman, and we thank her for her support.
Yes.
Yeah, Repair Campaign, Community Healing Network, all of our partners, people who came on board with us for our academy. We give thanks for them because it is in building community that we are healed. So we give
Yes.
thanks for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely want to again say thank you to all of our participants this year. From all around the world, North, South America, Europe, Africa. That Europe is you, and Nicholas.
I have to acknowledge that I'm interconnected. Okay, I don't want to, but I have to.
Yeah, all of our participants from around the world who have taken a moment to stop and reflect on why healing and reconnection is important, what it involves, and willing to give of themselves and what they know and what they've experienced to help other people who, as Nicholas said, whether they watch the conversation live or they watch it 10 years from now, will speak to them and provide something that they might need in the moment. So I say thank you to all the participants. Anybody else want to thank anybody?
I say thank you to our audience for being receiving, and I want to commend them for wanting to unlearn and learn and heal and reconnect, because it's very difficult to make the decision to do these things and then to take action as well. But we are here, we are doing our best to provide as much resources as we can. We're building a catalog of information, an archive, of history, of stories, of tools, of technologies that we need now, that we needed, 5-10 years ago, and that we will need in the future. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and remembering that we don't have to do it alone. Our ancestors are waiting for us, and it's important for us to tap into that spiritual, realm to help us to go through.
Yeah.
And putting us on alert that next year is going to be our 5th year. So we so even as we feel good and we feel good about it, it's going to be the 5th year next year. So we have some serious thinking to do and some work to do, some more work to do.
Yeah.
Because we're celebrating that, right? 5 years. So
Erica, that just means you want to drum and dance barefoot. That's what that means, Sean.
Basically.
Yeah. We're going to drum, we're going to dance, we're going to sing. And if we get the space, we're going to light a bonfire too. So we're doing the full works.
All right, so we need to find a space. All right. If anybody has a space they would like to donate to the Black Consciousness Festival for our 5-year bonfire, send us an email.
Yes. The ancestors are waiting for us. They're giving us the guidance. Let's go for it.
Right.
So thank you.
And of course, thank you to our board members who, have been extremely involved this year, actually. The board members have been doing leading a lot of the conversations, involved in the conversations. Nicholas led a conversation, Taika was in a conversation, Erica led several, Iva led conversations. Everybody has been very involved. So we continue to thank you for your support and recognition of the need for this work. And as
shouting out Anderson not here, but a Brazilian partner, we sending some love to Anderson,
right.
Keeping the flame going. Yes.
Correct. And of course, we, one of the other things that stood out to me is that we kind of change the need for us to change our languaging about our existence, right? And Erica, you talked about it, that we're not struggling.
Yeah, we're not struggling.
We're calling in the good vibes. We're calling in the prosperity and the health and the reconnection as we move forward.
as we move forward. So we give thanks. Always we give thanks.